Hey everyone, this is Dr. Savage. Good evening, everyone. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics. I don't know how many of you know, but I am absolutely fascinated with Shark Tank. I absolutely love it. It's like my adrenaline flows watching it because there's so much poured into the show itself. And I remember when I launched my program here in Greenville, I had a mock Shark Tank. And then one of the things I wanted to do most was to add some value to my community. So very excited about being here today and talking about this hot topic, which we're going to be talking a lot about terminology, the terminology that's used doing business, or when you're pitching in front of a panel, or language that's used on Shark Tank. And the reason why we're going to do that is because I don't know about you, but sometimes they can ask questions that you need a dictionary for. So to sharpen our skills, I have decided that it would be a very good idea to begin to break down some of that terminology for all of the Shark Tank fans. Some people know what that means, but there's a lot that goes over our head if you're not a finance person. Hey, how you doing? We're talking about Shark Tank, and we're talking about some of the terminology that they use in the Shark Tank. So very glad you could join us this evening. And if you are here, please slide to the right and share with your followers, or slide up and share with your followers. So glad that you could be here this evening. The first term that we're going to be looking at is called acquisition. What is acquisition? Hi, Wooten Fitness. We're talking about shark thinking. Hey, thank you for sharing. We're talking about shark thinking, and so we can get a better understanding of what my guys and girls be talking about on Shark Tank, because that is my favorite show. Acquisition is what we're talking about today. Hey, acquisition is an asset or object. This is a teaching tool now, guys. I want you guys to listen up, because I don't want you to walk away from not getting this. Acquisition is an asset or object, that has been bought or obtained. Acquisition, that's what we're talking about tonight. What does that mean to the sharks? Hi, how are you? We're talking about what this all means to the Shark Tank. How many of you are Shark Tank enthusiasts? I am, and I can't wait to get off my scope to see them. Are any of you out there Shark Tank fans? Followers? Anybody? Yes, me too. So I've decided as an angel coach, because I watch it all the time, that I want to be able to teach the concepts to people, because we often watch things and the terminology goes way over our head, right? How many of you know what acquisition is? Anybody? If you do, say me. Okay. All right. So there are some who don't. So acquisition is the process, is an asset or object that has been bought or obtained. And if you're here, please share this with your friends. Thank you so much for sharing. And this is usually done to assume some sort of control over the asset or a particular company. And it's very, very important to distinguish the difference. And let's go further and talk about, well, what is an asset, right? Hey, what is an asset, right? Well, that's something that an individual, a corporation, or a country owns. They own this. Like, I know you've heard of, you have your own financial assets. If you're an entrepreneur, then you have financial assets. If you have some product, that is an asset. If you have some process within your company, that is an asset. Some infrastructure that you use to deliver is an asset. So these are all assets. The acquisition is usually done to assume some sort of control, and sometimes it's done in a friendly manner, And sometimes it's done in a hostile manner. Hostile takeovers aren't the best. But those friendly ones, check out my friend Woo Fitness. If you were wanting to sell your land, your ground level fitness gym, right? Because you're going to travel now all over the world, and you're going to coach and teach all over the world, and you are your product now, but you have several products. You are an asset to your company, but your company, your land, your physical building and your property is also an asset here in this town. What if you decided that, okay, I'm going to sell that piece because maybe some investors may have some better way of growing that particular component because they have some major influence, right? So you can go before the Shark Tank and say, hey, for a certain amount of equity, or you give me a certain amount of dollars and I'll give you a certain amount of equity in my company. So let's talk about equity. We've learned acquisition, which is the acquiring a company or an asset or an object. An asset, which is something that is an individual, a corporation, or a country owns. And then equity, which is the value of that asset. And we only know what the value of an asset is by evaluating our companies, which we'll get into later because we're really just talking about acquiring a company. Why is acquisition important? Hello, thank you for joining me, and thank you for all the wonderful hearts. You guys are awesome. Acquisitions are important because they grow a company, right? Or save a company in many cases. So these companies, for example, let's look at the oil industry. Say you have been the benefactor of some land that you know has proven to produce some type of oil, right? And you have an infrastructure, but you don't have time. Here, another situation of acquiring, right? Hey, Wellness Fitness Gate, thank you for rejoining. So you have this land, and you know it proves to bear oil, but you don't have time. Well, someone comes along, the sharks come along, and they want to acquire it. So they can at a certain price, or for a certain percentage, or that person may just want to outright sell it. They acquire that particular asset. And I hope this all makes sense because we're not going to hang on to this long. Now, we also know that businesses consist of what? Assets, resources, systems, standards, and protocols. That's what businesses consist of. And these are applied to assets, resources that create some economic benefit. That's why the sharks are always asking these questions about who owned it before, whether they received funding, had it ever been acquired, how much money was received, what did they do with the money. They need to weigh the benefits of the asset before they make any consideration for acquiring any portion of it in order to help that company to grow. And what happens with the sharks is they generally want to acquire equity, and they'll give you some money because they're going to get a return on their investment. By asking all the difficult questions, then they learn whether it's a profitable venture for them to get into. But it's very, very important also to consider the background of the sharks, because what we do know is that sharks have a particular background and a particular interest. And if you listen carefully, they're going to ask you too, what is your background? And if your background somehow doesn't line up with what you're doing, and it's not equaling out to some sort of cash or money or economic benefit, then they're going to wonder why are you in it. Okay, and that's when your passion should exude, because there are businesses and people who join or have certain businesses who have never explored that particular business or studied it before, but because they have a passion for it, the sharks can see whether that person is going to be willing to stick to it, and move through it. You see what I'm saying? That's where this is going. Hey, thank you for the hearts. I'm so excited. But anyway, we were talking about acquisition, why it's important, what is business, let's recap. Acquisition is the process of taking over an asset or an object that has been bought or obtained, acquired, right? Just like the sharks do all the time when they acquire a particular equity in a company. Assets, that's something that either an individual, a corporation, or a country owns. Yes, acquisition. Then we're talking about equity. Equity, yes, assets. Then we talk about equity is the value of that asset. So the next time you watch the Shark Tank, I want you to hit me up and let me know whether any of this information, whether this has given you some sort of ding or some sort of light bulb has gone off to make the clarity of their conversations more important. Because I absolutely love Shark Tank and I absolutely value everything about what we can do to make our community more lucrative by studying and understanding the concepts of angel investment, venture capitalism, business loans, and how we go about those things. But we must first understand the language. Today we're talking about acquisition. This is Dr. Eve Angel Savage over at Audacity Group Social Enterprise. I am an angel, your angel coach, where I teach people to identify, initiate, and implement strategies of distinction for investment readiness. So very excited to teach on that concept tonight of acquisition. Thank you so much for joining me. I love the hearts, and thank you so much for joining. Have yourself a great evening. I gotta go hit up some Shark Tank.